Hey YouTube, back again with some more Surfskate updates. I've got a slightly new spring arrangement on the Surfskate design that I've come up with. I'm just going to show you some bits and pieces on these springs at the moment. I mentioned in my last video about using double swivel springs. They're alright for a while, but if you can see that, they stretch just in that area there. And that's the stainless steel ones. These are the original Surfskate springs, same deal, they stretched out as well. What was happening is that the stroke length for the rotation of the truck was about 100% on the spring length, so it was stretching out to more than double the spring length, and over time the material fatigues and it stretches. So what I did to solve that was I decided to use some brake springs from a Toyota Landcruiser 80 series. Two different types they've got on the back there for the brake springs. There's a thicker one here that's about a 2.1mm thick wire, and a slightly thinner one which is about 1.9mm wire. I've used the 1.9mm wires. This is a longer spring than the traditional Surfskate one, and I'll show you how I've set that up on the front truck now. Alright, there's the front truck. Now if you remember from my last video, what I had was the springs on the back here, and I had these Surfskate springs set on the back and mounted into the back there, into a hole at the back of the suspension truck that I'm using for my Surfskate design. That was good, but like I said, the springs stretched. So what I decided to do now is to modify it slightly. A bit difficult to see, but what I've got is I've got the spring attached to the hanger still, but into the base here I've mounted it into a plate, an extension plate at the front there. Okay, that extension plate is made out of spring steel, and you can pretty much make one of those for, well, very little money. You use either a old paint scraper, or if you've got an old one of these lying around, this is an old saw, spring steel, and you can cut out the shape you need to make that adapter at the front there. Drilled a couple of holes here so I can position the spring in a couple of different locations if I want to get different pre-tension on it and different spring back to center rates doing that. It doesn't change the amount of force required to move or to swivel the truck, but it does change the rate at which it returns to center, the spring back to center of that design. Now that plate's just mounted underneath there, in between the bolts and the riser. Okay, so it's bolted in between the truck and the riser pad. What I did as well is I put a cable tie in there that bridges across between those two springs, and what that does is it just nicely firms it up a little bit and stops any twanging of the spring. Alright, I'll give you a bit of a look at the whoop, hang on, this camera stand's giving me a bit of grief, just bear with me folks. I'll give you a bit of a look at the swivel range on this. So I was talking about different Surfskate designs in a different video once before. Some of the slide designs and some of the cheaper designs, they spin about 20 degrees, 25 degrees. Okay, Surfskate does a full 360. Carvers do around about 35 to 40. I think it's 37 is what they say in the literature. Smoothstar 45 to 50 degrees, and this one I can get all the way up to nearly 70 degrees rotation, and it's self-limiting by the compression of this side and the extension of that side. I could probably push it further, but once you start going beyond that, especially when you've got that slope back effect on this design, you're going to start to get it just locking up on you and diving, and you don't want that. That doesn't feel so good. So there's some mods on the return to center spring back system of this design. Okay, it's got a nice crisp spring back to center, and when you're riding it, you can really feel that it really wants to return to center nicely. There's a good progressive force as you're turning into that, or leaning into that turn, and progressively increasing the tension of the springs, and then as you come back out of the turn, it kicks back to center and gives you that beautiful little boost that you need. Alright, just quickly on the springs I've used. I haven't done this yet, but I'm going to find my vernier, and I'll just give you a heads up on what the length of these springs are. Some dimensions on it. I'm going to turn your computer upside down to see this. They're around about 70 millimeters, 71 millimeters in length. You want to get a spring that preferably has the hook ends on both sides. What I did with the ones I've got on here is I just twisted that around a bit with a pair of pliers to get it in the right location to fit into the plate better, and along with the hanger. Not too hard to do. So yeah, that's the length of it. I think the diameter is about 11 millimeters by minute. Yeah, 11 millimeters. Alright, and as I said, that's probably around about, it says 1.95 millimeters, but it's got paint on it, so say about 1.9 millimeter thickness steel, and that gives a good tension. I weigh around about, I think it's about 84 kilos. I'm not sure, I haven't weighed myself in a while, and I stand about 5'8", and for me that gives a nice feel. If you're a bigger bloke, I reckon you could probably get away with the thicker springs, but you might have to use a slightly thicker spring plate, because the more tension you put into that, the less life you're going to get out of it. I think that's only a very thin bit of plate that I've got in there. What I'll probably do in the next design is I'll have it so that the spring plate itself can actuate a little bit as well. Now, this one seems to actuate a little bit anyway, so that it works in conjunction with the spring. That wasn't a design consideration when I made this. I just wanted something to mount the springs into, but then I thought about it a bit and I thought maybe we can get a bit more spring flex with the plate itself. So there you go. That's the Avenue suspension truck turned into a Streetsurfer, as I call it. Everyone calls them Surfskates, well I'll call it a Streetsurfer just to define it a bit differently. Now, I also had someone ask me about how do you set these bearings up. I'm not going to pull this one apart, it's a bit of a task in itself. So what I'll do is I'll just take it down to the back truck, we'll pull that apart, and you can see exactly what I pack into that. So there's my rear suspension track. Hopefully my phone holds up to this. And all you've got to do to get this done, let's get this one off. I was talking about the back truck in my last video, and about the boost you get out of it being the spring return system, and it does a great job. I've since used harder bushings in this one, and it even does better again now. I've got some Bones 95As, cones, top and bottom. They're an awesome bush. They come with some hard center core or something they call it, and yeah, it does make a difference. I like them. That's the top one off, that's the bottom one off, put them to the side. Now on the front truck what we have is some spacer washers. Got nylons and steelies. They're 3/8 and they're 10mm, so same difference basically. And what you do, depending on the height you want this set at, you just change the amount of packing washers or spacers you want in there. I'm going to show you two different bearing models that we can set up in this. Bottom bearing is a 51100, okay? It's about an ABEC 1 or ABEC 3 bearing at the most, straight out of China, and that goes in there, and I use that as my bottom bearing. And that, if I didn't have the pivot on this one, actually what I'll do, I'll just grab this hanger and show you with this one. So yeah, that sits on there, and that will then spin on that bottom bearing. Okay, to make sure that we get the continuation of the pivot and we get a way to keep that movement on top, we use another bearing on the top. This is a flat thrust washer. This is only a 4mm height. Put that on the top there, and then you just put your locking nut, over the top of that. Tighten it all down. Now, if you notice, I've used two different types of bearings there. I've used a 51110, which is a 24 outside diameter, 10mm inside diameter, and I think it's 11mm height profile on that one. And I've used another one, I can't remember the flat washer or the flat bearings part number, but it's a basically the same dimensions, but because it's a flat thrust bearing, it's in the profile. So you just lock that up, and then you turn it back about one flat, just to loosen it up again and get that nice spinning without too much side play. Once you've got that in position, you grab your springs. Now there's two ways you can do this. You can do this in situ here, like this is being shown here on this one, and then you mount it into your front mounting plate there. That's pretty hard to do. What I generally do is I fit the springs both sides to the hanger and the mounting plate, drag that up over the bolt, the kingpin bolt, and then lock it all down. That's a much easier way to do it. So that's what the bearings look like, and that's how you stack the bearings in position, and that's what allows the swivel movement of the truck once you've got it set up that way. Okay, I've also we've had a heck of a lot of rain. I was promising some people some footage of how this thing performs, and it's been hard to get out and find a dry spot. I dropped my son off at the train station this morning, and I managed to get to an undercover car park, and I just did a quick run back and forth just to show you a bit of the pumping motion of it. Nothing major. I'll try to get up to the local skate park when it dries out, so we can get some carving footage on the actual skate park. But pumping wise, I'm pretty impressed. I like this. Probably, it's going about a slow jog pace, depending how hard you push it. But you can keep pumping at a reasonable slow jog pace for a while without getting too puffed on this. Or if, as you see in my video, I use a push pole, or they call a land paddle, and the land paddle combined with the pumping, combined with the kick pushing, just allows me to choose whichever way I feel like moving the board around at the time, to get from one place to another. Just gives you a bit of variety. Alright folks, I think that's about it. You probably don't want to watch me put this truck back together, so I'll sign off for now and catch you later.